Hey guys, what is up? Ioki here bringing you a patch rundown support focused tier list for patch 10.19. So as we all know, 10.19 is going to be the patch that Worlds is played on. Not a huge fan of Worlds. I'm more of a solo queue only kind of guy. So these are going to be mostly solo queue oriented picks, things that you can play in your own games. However, because Riot knows that Worlds is played on this patch, there's lots of meta shifts, lots of buffs and nerfs focused on certain targeted classes so that they get a little bit more exposure in Worlds. You know, Riot knows the types of champions we like to see on the big stage. So if you guys don't know who I am and this is one of your first videos watching, my name is Ioki. I am the greatest support alive, and I am a Grandmaster support player, a multi-season Grandmaster player, and I actually stream every single day at twitch.tv/Ioki, that's I0KI. I'll leave a link down in the description if you guys want to come check me out. We play lots and lots of off-meta stuff, and also, you know, try hard. We do all kinds of stuff, guys. But here is going to, let's get right into the tier list, starting all the way at the bottom, tier 5. So these champions, there's no way around it. These champions are trash in the support role. If you want to play them, obviously I'm a huge proponent of play whatever you want, play what's fun to you, and especially if you're seeing success with it. But my opinion, these champions are just not very good. Won't spend too much time on this tier. Annie has really just never recovered to her glory days of being a support like she was back in Season 3, 4, 5. She's just a little bit too short range. Can't really compete with most of the mages, can't really compete with most of the damage output. She's just not very good. Ivern is another champion that people have always wanted to see be played support because he's got those enchantery aspects. He's got the shield. He's got the knockup from Daisy. People have just always wanted to force this champion as a support, but that's the thing. You're forcing it. You're really not letting it occur naturally. You can build Redemption, you can build the Athenes, but why are you playing Ivern over any other enchanter? By the way, enchanters are very, very good today. As we get higher up in the tier list, you can see that support's actually in a pretty decent spot in terms of the variety of champions that you can play. You're going to see some champion classes come out a little bit on top of others. Like, for instance, enchanters are very, very strong right now. So champions like Lulu and others that you'll see at the top of the tier list are good. But you can also be playing all kinds of stuff like tanks, hard engage, counters to the enchanters. The one class that we're kind of struggling to see a lot of representation from is mages, things like Zyra Brand, but we'll get into that. Anyways, Fiddlestick support. They killed this champion in the support role. Unfortunately, they genuinely just killed it. Unfortunately, when they updated him, they got rid of his Bouncing Crow, which was like the entire purpose of playing him support. There's just no real reason to be playing Fiddlestick support right now. So we put him in the tier 5 trash can. Amumu support, same thing. I do think he's a little bit undervalued. Like, people see you lock in Amumu support and it's kind of, they think you're trolling. I've got a couple of Amumu support games where we absolutely pop off. So, you know, check those out if you want to see them. They're really fun to play Amumu as like a nuclear bomb style, just going full AP and deleting people. But overall, not a great pick. He's got hard engage, he's got a lot of damage, but there's no real reason to pick him over actual tanks or actual nuclear champions. Malzahar, same thing. You're really only destroying your wave control by spamming this champion, by spamming your E, by spamming your W. You shove the wave constantly. Don't got a lot of kill pressure. You do bring a silence and some lockdown with your R, but outside of that, like, that's a very small window of opportunity, and you should just be playing an actual lockdown champion at that point. Rammus. Now, I get a lot of hate for this, so I'm not going to lie. I know that some players have some success with Rammus. I personally have never seen any real reason to play him over Leona. He seems incredibly limited by not being able to go through the wave, whereas Leona can. I just don't see it. Ram, sorry, buddy. I love you, but you're tier 5. Anivia support, we're actually going to move her up to a low tier 4, because I have seen some insane high elo support one tricks just play Anivia support, and the things that those players can do, it just like blows your mind. It's like their brains are just wired differently, man. They're like walling you into a wall, you can't move, stunning you for 7 seconds straight. It's crazy. But if you're not an Anivia one trick, probably shouldn't play the champion. Nunu, same thing as Ivern. This is a champion that people have always wanted to force him into being a support. It's not really great. Even with this new style of Nunu where you're like building him full AP, Predator, snowballing through waves, roaming at level 2, it doesn't work as well as it does from mid lane, so I don't see any reason to play it as support. So, on to the tier 4s. Tier 4 is not very good. You're hurting your chances of climbing up playing these champions, but again, we're starting to get more into like the for fun territory where like it's not actually trolling if you're picking these champions. So, immediately you guys are probably going to recognize a new addition to the League of Legends champion roster. We got Samira, new champion, dropping on this patch. Yes, I have played her as a support. Yes, I did pop off, and if you want to watch that video, it's a really, really good one. But even though we're pulling off, you know, Samira support pentakills, I think the champion is honestly just pretty overtuned. I think when she comes out, she's going to sit somewhere around a 49% win rate, and then within a few patches, she'll find her way up to like a 52%. Like, she's honestly just a pretty crazy champion in general, so I think that's where a lot of the success that I was finding with her. I think once she's more balanced, she'll find herself in the tier 5, but I wanted to include her just for fun, just in case anybody was curious how good Samira is. We're going to kind of go at a little bit brisker of a pace. Gragas, he did receive a buff, so I pulled him out of the trash can, and now he's just in tier 4. Brand, again, like I talked about earlier, guys, the mages are just the one class that is really this season struggling in the support role. We're not seeing a ton of supplementary damage coming out of the ADC, and you might be thinking, oh, if ADCs are doing less damage this season, why would you not, you know, take the damage into your own hands? Because Brand by himself, until you get like 2 items on him, he's not actually able to one-shot people. So it's a better strategy right now to have an enchanter to enhance the ADC's damage, and you're going to get more of a DPS output that way than playing these champions. They're very, very high risk and like medium reward right now. Whereas if you, in other seasons, if you play Brand, it's high risk, high reward, right? Unfortunately, so a lot of these mages, now there is one exception that we'll get to later. A lot of these mages you're seeing, they just all kind of fall into the same category. Zyra, she struggles from the same problem. Syndra, I love her. She's probably one of my favorite off-meta supports, but same problem. Now, Ahri, I have pulled her out of tier 5 because she is getting a buff this patch. It's not a huge buff, but, you know, she was always kind of high tier 5 anyways. She was almost on the verge of not being dumpster. Again, if you're an Ahri player, you will be able to find success with her in the support role. I know there's a player by the name of Legit Korea who's really good at Ahri, and he makes her work in the support role. Typically want to play her Glacial and kind of have like a catch rather than like a one-shot style. Utility catch slow stuff. Shaco support, same thing, relies a lot on cheese, and you know, it is what it is. Tom Kench, this champion is so doomed. I feel bad for anyone that plays him at this point. He is just incredibly unplayable. The champion really only presents one reason to play him, and that's like a get-out-of-jail-free card for your ADC. And there are so many champions that do that better. Lulu is basically a walking get-out-of-jail-free card, so why would you ever play Tom Kench? They have just nerfed him into oblivion. Nico, very, very fun champion, and I have found some medium-moderate success with her on support, but she seems a little bit too short range to be able to compete with any other champion that does the same thing that she does, and it's really risky if you miss your Tangle Barbs, then you're not going to get your whole combo. Like, missing your E means you only get 1 proc of your Q, it's not very much damage, just not super great. Karma, they dumpstered this champion a couple patches ago. She's kind of the exception to the rule that enchanters are the best class right now. Karma, I don't see any reason to play this champion. They dumpstered her damage, and her utility, its shields, heals, was never as good as the other enchanters to begin with, so no real reason to play Karma in my opinion. Pike, one of the most fun champions in the game, incredibly difficult to make work consistently. He is the definition of a hit-or-miss champion. Love Pike, but I can't in good conscience put him higher than tier 4. Poppy, she's kind of relegated to a counter pick. So if someone locks in Pike or Leona or any hard engaged champion that is going to be dashing towards your ADC, Thresh even when he lands the hook, Poppy pops open that W and she ruins their whole day. But outside of that, I wouldn't be like burst picking Poppy or choosing her a whole lot. Scion, not a whole lot to say about this guy. He used to be a really good cheese pick, and I have seen people playing him as a support where you go Glacial and you basically just int into them, you die, and then in your passive, you're still proccing Glacial and just punching them, and you pick up a few funny kills that way, but not super great. Camille, same thing, kind of like an off the beaten path type player. Same thing for a couple of these other champions I've named. If you're a Camille player and you've got the mechanics, you've got the animation cancels memorized, you can make it work, but I don't recommend most people play her. J4, if you're going to play him as a support, you're not going to play him as a tank. You're not going to play him as a full AD like jungler paths do. You play him as a AP J4. And if that sounds fun to you, check out my AP J4 videos. I've got a ton of them. I'll teach you everything about how to do it. You build him airy, and it's like you're a shield heal god. It's really fun, but I can't in good conscience put him higher than tier 4 because it's not. You've got very large windows, gaps where you use your E, and it's down for like 13 seconds, and you're not really contributing anything for those 13 seconds. Talia, if you're going to pair her with a kill lane, something like a Pantheon ADC, but we don't see a lot of those anymore. So Talia by herself, you don't want to run a Talia support with like an Ashe or an Ezreal or even a Caitlyn. It's just hard because ADCs have a really hard time. Like for instance, a Caitlyn trap, Talia's CC is a displacement, right? You're going to be popping them into the air, and it's really hard to be in sync with a solo queue ADC where Caitlyn knows to put down a trap and then you pop them into it. That's really hard. With Caitlyn, you want to be playing stuff like Leona or Morgana, someone that keeps them in one spot for her to walk up and put a trap down. I hate Caitlyn, by the way. Don't want to talk about her anymore. So we got Galio next. Not much to say about him, really. I do think he's really good in the right hands, but I don't see him in the right hands very frequently. If you run him, you want to run Aftershock. You want to be kind of like a big tough front line for your ADC, and you also want to swap out your secondary runes and bring Nimbus Cloak and Celerity. It's really, really good for Cheese to like flash on them and get that huge Nimbus Cloak spike and just power up your W, and you're just sprinting at them. But outside of that, Flash is a 5-minute cooldown. Can't really do much outside of that. We already talked about Anivia. So on to the next tier, we got Tier 3. These champions are average and should only be played if you are skilled with them or used as counter picks. So kind of what I said about Poppy, but for this entire tier. Teemo. I think Teemo's slept on. I said this in my last tier list video. I think Teemo's support is actually really, really slept on. I think there is some merit to him, and this patch I'm actually going to try to get into the nitty-gritty and find like a really good support Teemo build. I might hit up some of my Teemo streamer friends and be like, yo, what is like the most efficient way to play a Teemo support? I typically go Airy, and he does a lot of damage on a support budget. Like, you really only need like one item, and you can be like 2, 3, 4-shotting people. Shin, I've always considered him a slightly inferior version of Leona. He's higher damage, but way higher risk. Because if Shin taunts in and misses his taunt, he's probably going to die, right? Whereas if Leona misses her Zenith Blade, which is the similar way that she engages onto people, it's just, you're going to take a little bit of damage as Leona. You're going to be inconvenienced. Whereas Shin, you very well might die, because that's a long cooldown on your taunt. It's the only hard CC that you have, and, you do more damage, and you bring cool utility through your ultimate, but you typically are just playing him exactly like you would play Leona. It's just riskier. Nautilus. Big fall from grace this season for Nautilus. Not seeing a whole lot of reason to play him over, as I said, Leona. He typically does a lot better in team play. So we might be seeing him over Leona in Worlds, for instance, or in some of the other tournaments, maybe Twitch Rivals, but I don't see a lot of him from solo queue. He's way more Aftershock dependent than Leona is, because if Nautilus doesn't have his Aftershock, he's honestly not that tanky. Whereas Leona constantly has her W that makes her tanky. Braum. Don't play Braum, guys. Tarik. So Tarik is pretty good into the other tanks. So when you see an enemy lock in Leona, someone you know is going to be going in on you, you can play Tarik, and that's a pretty good pick. He also plays really, really well. He pairs really, really well with hyper carries. We've all seen the funnel strats with like Tarik mid and Master Yi. You can basically do that same thing if you have like a Master Yi on your team as Tarik, but the laning phase is quite hard to actually land the stun. So unless they're going in on you and they're in your face and the stun is like basically unmissable, I don't like playing Tarik as a offensive pick, and I'm a very offensive playmaking oriented player, so I don't normally choose Tarik. Maokai, I know I've used this comparison a lot, but he's kind of just a worse Leona. Like, he really is. So, like, Leona has a very binary kit, right? She goes in, she stuns, and that's pretty much what she has. She has, like, 3 seconds of stuns, and that's what she does. She locks down one person. A lot of these champions, these Leona analogs, that's what they do, and, they bring something else to the table. Like, Shin has his ultimate, or, Nautilus has CC a little bit more spread out in a knockup, but you're pretty much playing them the same way as Leona. You engage on a single target, and you try to burst that target. No real reason to play Maokai over Leona. I will say Maokai gets significantly tankier than Leona, so if you're looking purely for a frontline, maybe choose Maokai. Morgana is the ultimate counter pick against hard engaged champions, against the Blitzcranks, against the Leonas, against the Threshes. You plop that black shield on someone and they're not going to have fun. Alistar, I have recently moved him up from tier 3 to tier 4 to tier 3 because they gave him a pretty significant buff to his Q, cut off 2 seconds of it. I think Alistar's in a much better spot right now. Not the best, but if you're planning on roaming, and I think he's pretty good in team fights. You can do a lot with that limited kit of his. You know, you'd think he has a pretty standard, simple kit, right? He's got a push forward, and he's got a knock up, but you can do some pretty crazy stuff, especially when you take into consideration like Hex Flash and cheesing over walls and stuff. Hey, shout out to Helicopter. Ashe, love playing her as a support. I think she is undervalued, actually. I love playing her as a support, actually. She brings some really cool stuff. She brings dead easy hard engage from her ultimate. She brings a lot of dominance in lane. She has a built-in glacial, which doesn't require her to go into the glacial keystone to actually slow people. And she brings something really unique. She brings vision, which obviously vision control is a huge part of playing support. So I do think Ashe is in tier 3. I don't see a ton of her, but when I do see her, she usually does pretty well. Swain is basically just a mage version of a hard engage. If that's what you're looking for, if you need a little bit more AP. I think ever since his little rework, which is basically just a buff in disguise, I think Swain is pretty good. Alright, now we're getting into the really good champions, right? And there's a lot of them in this tier, and a few of them in tier 1. The tier 1s are the king of the crop. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these tier 2s individually. Janna, I think she has been creeping up in power, mostly because of the types of ADCs that are strong right now. Previously, I think I had her in tier 4, but she has been creeping up despite receiving no buffs just because of the shifting landscape of the meta, what bot lane looks like, who is getting played, what and where. I think Janna's pretty good. Senna, she is getting nerfed on this patch, but I wanted to talk about Senna because the nerf is not actually targeted towards Senna support. The nerf is basically the amount of souls that you get from minions that you kill is going from 8% to, I believe, 4%. So it's getting halved. That only really results in, like, a couple of souls for every 100 minions killed. It's not a big deal. It's like, I think it's four minions, right? It would be like 4 souls, and that's for Senna ADC. We're seeing Senna ADC much more in a much more prevalent role than Senna support right now. I still think Senna support's really, really good, and this nerf does not affect that. But I did want to talk about that because I've been getting asked a lot about how hard the nerf is going to hit Senna support. It's not. It's really not even going to hit Senna ADC that hard, but it's not going to hit Senna support basically at all. Let's talk about my girl, Leona. I do think she's in a pretty good spot. She's getting professional play. She's getting played on this super Chinese server that I keep hearing about. If you're looking for an aggressive pick in lane, she's your girl. I'm talking flash on people, level 1, level 2 type stuff. Like, you don't want to play Leona, go super passive though. You want to be playing Leona really, really aggressively. And I actually forgot to add a champion, so I'm going to add this right now, and it's a perfect place to talk about it. Pantheon. Pantheon support is disgusting in lane. Pantheon support and Leona support are like 2 peas of the same pod, right? They want to be played the exact same way. The only thing is that Pantheon falls off hard, especially as a support. But if you can convince your ADC to lock in like a mage, like for instance, in a high elo tournament, I played Pantheon support with Karthus ADC, and we destroyed them. That video is on YouTube, by the way, if you want to check it out. We destroyed them. In solo queue, I've still been having moderate success even when they lock in an ADC. You probably don't want to be playing it with something that needs to scale, like Twitch or Ezreal or Kog'Maw or something. But if you can convince your ADC to go like Draven or Tristana, bro, Pantheon support is insane. You literally just start fighting at level 1, and it's really, really fun. But that's the type of player I am, so. Lux. Lux and Sona did get nerfed, I believe, 2 patches ago. They were the absolute dominant, untouchable tier 1 supports because they were abusing that weird double support item. Individually, they're okay. Or they're good. They're good individually. I don't think anyone's still running the double support strat anymore due to the nerfs that they did. But the nerfs, honestly, they didn't like dumpster them by any means. They're still very good individually. Lux, you can obviously play her full AP, go in common and sorcery. I think the better option right now is going Guardian because you still do a weird amount of damage even if you're building full utility. Yuumi, unfortunately, just like Janna, Yuumi is creeping her way back up the tier list. I had her pegged as a dead champion, and I do think she was for a while. But I think we're seeing a lot of hyper carries in other positions. And Yuumi, that's always kind of been the secret to Yuumi, right? is you're not there really just for your ADC. In fact, putting Yuumi on an ADC is sometimes one of the worst things you can do. You lock in Yuumi, you get through laning phase, you buy your Athenes, and then you go on to like your Kayn or, you know, your Set, and you just make those bruisers unkillable. So I do think, not because of her laning phase or because of her synergy and actual strength in bot lane, but because you hit that 15-20 minute mark and you're empowering someone else to just 1v9 the game. Nami, I think she's really fun, I think she's really good, and I think she's great in solo queue. Enough said, she's kind of just does it all. She heals, she's got a decent amount of damage, she can hold her own in trades in early game, she scales pretty well, and she's an excellent team fighter. Make sure you're hitting those bubbles. Same thing as Sona, as I talked about with Lux. They did have that strategy. They were nerfed individually and together, and now she's still pretty good. She's still pretty good. She's a little bit rough to get through laning phase with, but she always has been and she always will be. No champion scales better numbers-wise than Sona. I'm going to say that again. No champion scales number-wise, like on paper, than Sona. She's crazy. Thresh, I have taken him out of tier 1 just because I've seen less people playing him. But I still think he's very good. His kit will always... You can't nerf Thresh's kit, right? He's just got so much going on. It's just such an inherently good kit. So Thresh finds his way into tier 2. My man Zilean is getting a lot of attention. However, a lot of attention in the mid lane. Bjergsen had a few pop-off games with him. People are starting to realize how big of an impact Zilean can have on a game. So I think people are starting to play a little bit more around the Zilean. But that doesn't always translate into support. I did bump him up 1 tier just because it's been very impressive to see the level of control. A little bit of a reminder of how good Zilean can be. And I think that people have noticed that and people are starting to play around them. But you aren't always going to get that in solo queue. You do need a long time to scale this champion. Blitzcrank, bumped him down from tier 1. Still think he's very, very good, mostly because he's a hard counter to a lot of these champions that are very good. Blitzcrank will destroy a Janna, destroy a Senna, destroy a Lux, destroy a Sona, Nami, Yuumi if you can catch her. But I do think Blitzcrank, unless they seriously nerf his tankiness at some point in the future, he's always going to be a solo queue star. Don't expect him to see him in Worlds, though. Alright guys, let's talk about the tier 1 supports. These are the cream of the crop. These are the best of the best. The greatest of the greatest, one might say. This is what we're looking at. So, brand new additions, Rakan and Bard. These two have been top of the season. Bro, I've been telling you Lulu is strong for like 8 months now. Ever since they buffed her E and how fast she can use that. So much of her kit relies around that. So much of her itemization relies around her E. So buffing it, I think they only added like 2 seconds to it, or reduced 2 seconds of it, but that's all it took. Lulu's been a dominant force in the entire season. Honestly, she enables so many hyper carries. Like, having a Lulu on your team is basically playing with cheat codes. New to tier 1, Rakan. He has received buff after buff after buff after buff. And while it's not exactly the buffs that we wanted to see, I personally would like to see them put a little bit of speed back into his kit. He has enough hard engage to be strong in solo queue, because solo queue hard engage, like picking people in solo queue, catching people is always going to be like the best way to end a game, right? He has enough of that to be strong in that front, but he's also got enough of enchantery in him to be at the top of the meta right now. There's better hard engage picks, but he's kind of like a jack of all trades, right? He's got hard engage, he's got peel, he's great at follow-up. You typically don't want to pull, you typically don't want to pick him as your primary hard engage. You want to pick someone like a Malphite, and then you zoom in after that and turn that mediocre engage that the Malphite found into a godlike engage, right? So he's follow-up, he's peel, he's heal, he does it all. Rakan's strong right now, guys. Play Rakan. Soraka. Not quite as excited to talk about Soraka. I think she's really stale and boring to play against, but numbers-wise, she's very, very strong. If you have a little bit of talent in terms of positioning and macro, you will dominate games as Soraka, or at least allow other people to dominate them. Bard, crazy, crazy solo queue champion. Not super high play rate, but very high win rate. So if you put 5 to 10, 20 games in on Bard, get the practice in, you will do very, very well. Now, warning to those who are going to read this tier list and go into their first game of ranked as Bard. Bard is one of the very unique champions that can actively hurt your own team. One bad ult can lose you the entire game. Can't really say that about any other champion. I know I kind of went out of order with these, but I was just kind of going off the top of my head. Guys, this has been the support tier list for 10.19 Worlds patch. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I love to hear your thoughts, and let me know if you want to see more content like this. I hope to see you guys at the stream. Take it easy, boys. Peace.